It's time to gather loved ones together for all the holidays' best spread. Lynn's has great prices on all your favorite Thanksgiving items, from delicious turkey with all the fixings to mashed potatoes and yummy pies. We have everything you need to create your perfect Thanksgiving dinner. Whether it's cooking the traditional meal, completely store-bought, or a combination of both, your best holiday meal starts here. Learn more and start shopping today at linsgrocery.com. Lynn's, where delicious begins.
Hi, this is Greg Kilstrom. Welcome to Season 3 of The Agile World, where we discuss customer and employee experience, organizational and workforce transformation, and how business can adapt and continually improve in an agile age. The Agile World podcast is brought to you by TEKsystems, an industry leader in full-stack technology services, talent services, and real-world application. For more information, go to teksystems.com. To read more about the topics discussed in this show, you can go to my website at theagile.world and read my latest articles, or get a copy of my latest book, The Agile Workforce, now available on Amazon and other retailers. Today we're going to talk about time as currency. While data has been called the new most valuable resource, the world keeps creating more and more data and information. We haven't yet found a way to make more time, which is why I believe it is the most valuable resource that exists. To help me discuss this topic, I'd like to welcome Marlo Higgins, Chief Inspirational Officer and coach, author, podcaster, and entrepreneur. Marlo,
hey, Greg, thank you so much for having me today.
Absolutely. Yeah, looking forward to talking. So let's jump in here and talk about time as currency for a bit. So you're a 3-time entrepreneur. You've coached many successful companies and entrepreneurs in your career. What have you learned about time management and prioritization that you think people need to more clearly understand?
And that's a brilliant question. And, you with the focus of being agile, time is so important to so many of us. And, when I was starting in 2005, I had an experience with my very first sales organization, 237 frontline people, right? That was a lot of people to prioritize. And the question that I was constantly being asked was, as their leader was, how should I be spending my time? And it's a great question. And I think so many people that are entrepreneurs and freedom seekers, people who work independently, we want to know what we can do and where we should be focused. And so I created a very specific thing to focus on that, how to maximize time for achievement, because it's very important that we don't waste time, that we get really clear on what we need to do, what we need to focus on to get the outcomes that we're looking for.
Yeah. What are some of the biggest misconceptions that entrepreneurs have about how they prioritize?
I don't think anybody's going to be surprised at this. I mean, that you have to hustle to succeed. But you know what? With the right systems, expectations, and accountability, you can have freedom. I had a client who was a business owner, and we got him down to like 21 hours a week, and his business is not only growing, but it's thriving and succeeding. So, you don't have to hustle, but you've got to get clear on what systems are in place, the expectations you have, and then hold yourself accountable to it.
Are those systems, so you coach a number of different people who've worked with a lot of different companies. How unique are those systems to the individual, or, let's say the company culture, and how much is kind of a common thread
most
throughout?
of the clients I work with, we find that being customized is the number one asset, because we can't follow necessarily always a cookie cutter approach. But when we can listen to the individual or the business or the organization, department, whatever, and say, okay, what is that core focus? And then let's match, what systems are necessary. That's when the freedom and the performance really ignites.
Yeah, got it. So, with so much talk, I don't think anyone disagrees with the idea that there needs to be, more productivity and efficiency. But, so many people are talking about this. Why do you think people and companies are still
Number
so bad
one
at
word, it's overwhelm. Everything that you mentioned, we just have so many distractions, and we have to make decisions. And if we're not conditioned in this climate, we're going to quickly get overwhelmed. And when we're overwhelmed, we easily shut down. And so I think we're bad at productivity is because we have so many things that are happening. Now, the definition of overwhelm is unmade decisions. So if you are overwhelmed, the question, if you're listening to this, ask yourself, what decisions do I need to make? And quickly, once you see that in black and white, you're able to approach it in a much productive way, and you can remove the overwhelm. You can really have laser clarity on what you need to do, and then just start doing it, and everything starts to get easier.
Yeah. How does things like delegation and kind of letting go of some of those things, how does that affect entrepreneurs
A
from your
big part,
experience?
that's when I say managing expectation, because what do you expect of yourself? I mean, if you're out there to be, Superman, well, guess what? You're human. And we can wear the cape for a
Right.
while, but there comes a point where we just can't do everything. And the best way to leverage our time is to include our people and empower them to help you make decisions and to reach levels of performance. And I think together with a clear expectation, that can highly be achieved.
Yeah. So your own career has adapted and has been agile over time as well. Can you talk about your story and your start as an entrepreneur and shift to being what you're doing today? How's this shaped your ability to be successful as a coach and
I
consultant?
my experience guides me, and so I don't expect anybody to do things that I've not already done for myself. And so integrity really stands tall, right? Because I've gone through experiences, and I call myself a triple crown entrepreneur, and that simply means that in 2005 I helped with a startup company. I was VP of sales. That was my title. It was me. It was me and two other business partners, and we built a multi-million-dollar sales organization. We did it in less than 36 months. We developed 39 states, opened up an international market. And so I've had to teach myself how to do that. I had not done that before. And so that really led me into the space of being an entrepreneur, where, entrepreneurs have the path of most resistance and the path that is least charted. So when I say that, we really need to tune in to introspective, right? We need to find out who we really are and how we best operate. So I've taken that experience. I was able to rebrand another company in 2008. It was a 6-year-old sales organization, and they just weren't firing off on all engines. They were not performing at their best. And so by implementing some simple systems, we took profits up 220%. We did it in 180 days. That's 6 months. And
Wow.
so it's just by plugging in some of the right things that I had learned from my first experience really ignited the performance in the rest. And then 10 years ago, I stepped out and I launched my own personal brand. And so by removing, being, going to work for just one company, I continue to serve many companies and individuals in the space of performance and taking everything that I've ever done. It makes me a really successful coach because it has allowed me to help other people do some of the things that I had to figure out myself. And so, 2016 came around. I'd been running hobby level in my business, and that just meant that I wasn't really, pushing it, but people were hiring me and it was going really well. But 2016, I stopped and I asked myself a core question that January. And I said, really, how am I supposed to serve? And the message that the universe sent back was like, get in front of people, right? So that for me
Yeah.
said, okay, I'm going to launch a podcast. I'm going to write a book. We're going to do a YouTube channel. We're going to take the brand to a whole nother level. And we've been able to successfully do that. And I'm right now in the works of publishing my second book. So, everything just kind of, again, you got to
Oh, great.
listen to yourself, right? And just kind of ask yourself some key questions. What should you be doing? And I think you'll get the answers there.
That's great. Yeah, and it's an interesting phenomena. I think that you mentioned as an entrepreneur and 3-time entrepreneur and doing all that, you learned a lot and through your own intuition and learning by doing. Right, I'm a strong believer in that, and yet as a coach, you're able to help people through that experience. So how do you kind of balance? It almost seems like some of the coaching and teaching needs to be teaching people how to think, not necessarily like there's plenty of amazing advice I know you're able to give, but how much of your time would you say is teaching someone an abstract concept of like how to learn versus more
Oh my God.
firsthand
Yeah. What you're
advice?
talking about is mindset, right? How to shift your mindset into a
Yeah.
way that you can win. And I teach in what I call mantras. So I wrote the book, The Making of a Maverick, Building Champions in Business and in Life. And the core principles I teach in that book are through Maverick mantras. Okay. Those mantras are those quick snippets, those things that you can tell yourself that quickly align you to have an outcome that's positive. For example, you're going to a sales meeting or you're going to pitch a proposal. And on the way, if you are in the car and you're telling yourself, everybody wants what I have to offer, okay, that's a Maverick mantra. Everybody wants what I have to offer. What happens is that mindset, that mental shift, you've already sold yourself on the fact that once you get in the room, they already want it. So you need to shift and just be
Yeah.
able to ask for it because that has already conditioned you to say, hey, they want what I have, but let me just have a clear ask. When do you want to get started? Do you see the ease of that? It's just that simple.
Yeah, no, that's great. I have a speaking gig later today, so I'm going to take some of that with me for that as well. So I
Yeah.
appreciate that. Yeah. Well, so let's switch gears a little bit and talk about the success boarding tool that you created for entrepreneurs. Can you give a little background, describe it, and explain why you
Absolutely,
created it?
100%. So 2005, I started that first sales team, right? And I said 237 people. That was a lot of people I needed to be managing and having conversations with. And what was happening within 24 months, 2 years later, 2007, what was happening is these conversations were quickly going into conversations that were negative, right? The sales team was feeling a lot of rejection. They were feeling a lot of failure, lack of passion. And so instead of like channeling the negative conversation of what's not going right, I said, okay, you have a 2 minute pity party, get it out, get the negative there because we need to speak it to get past it. But then I said, okay, I want you to shift and I want you to tell me everything that's felt good and everything that's went well over the last week. And that birthed the concept of success boarding. It's literally looking at the silver lining of what's going right, what's feeling good. And from those two positions, not like what achievements are happening, what results am I getting, but like if you look at your last 5 days, you can easily write down 3 things that felt good. Now you start to anchor in those, you start to compound that. If you do 3 things a week over time, in a month, you have 12 to 15 wins or successes over 20 days of production, right? We don't work 30 days a week, we work 20. 12 to
Right.
15, that's a
Right.
pretty substantial amount of anchoring into what's going right, what's feeling good, and then that fuel takes you forward. Now there's 3 different levels. I teach people how to speak their success, nothing less, not in a boastful spirit, but in a way that raises the bar because people want to work with other successful and busy people. If you're coming in and you're kind of ho hum, who's going to align with you? But if you can say with conviction, this is what's going right, people are going to onboard. You become tantalizing, polarizing, and your conversations are much more successful.
Yeah. Well, you kind of spoke to this a bit already, but what are the kind of results that you're targeting for people, like measurements and things like that um, that those who are using are getting
Yeah.
from success
Okay. So,
boarding?
what does success look like for my clients is basically what you're asking. They have more
Yeah.
time, they
Yeah.
have greater peace, they operate with a plan, they've got clarity, they're no longer spinning in circles. And so, I've got 3 very specific stories that, and measurable outcomes based on my client success. So, you know, 3 specific outcomes is, based on my clients taking it. I took a 3 year marketing company, right? They weren't making more than $42,000 a year, and they'd been doing it for 36 months. Well, in less than 6 months, we took and increased sales over $225,000 because they were
Wow.
implementing some of these strategies and just literally what you talked about. It's the way they were thinking, right? And so they were kind of hitting a bar, spinning in circles. But we said, okay, if you implement some of these core things, you can have a game changing business. I also worked with a CEO of a startup to better close business. And in 72 hours, he closed more than $90,000 in sales towards their $500,000 goal.
Wow.
What that was, it was 3 sales at 30,000 each. He did that in 3 days because he shifted his mindset. It was him just going into those interactions completely different. Like I said, everybody wants what I have to offer. So instead of, going and trying to sell somebody, we just started asking for the business and everything changed for him. So that was a second example. And I think one of the
Yeah.
biggest ones, I aligned with a small business and they desired to build out a 5 year growth plan, right? Like kind of the big picture. But upon working together, we met that 5 year plan and we did it in 5 months, having exponential growth with a sustainable business plan. The only reason is we go back to that factor of time. If you allow yourself 5 years to get there, you're going to take 5 years to get there. But I said, hey, just imagine if
Hmm.
you did this in 5 months, what would that look like? She said, nobody's ever challenged me like that. So we did it. She had the outcome, and those are just a few examples of things that have really happened because of the principles that I teach as a coach.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, I can. The 5 year thing resonates. It's like we give things the space that or we allow things the space that they're able to take up, or something like that. So in that case, what were some of the blockers? Because I think a lot of people kind of operate under that. They may say, "Well, I'm good with a deadline," and so the deadline kind of dictates the length of how long it takes them to be successful or something. How did you could you give a little more insight on like how did you work? What were some of the initial roadblocks that you had to kind of overcome with
Yeah,
that person?
here's the one thing too is chasing the goal is actually chasing a feeling that a goal gets us. And so instead of saying that's my 5-year goal, I said,
Mhm.
rather, how do you want to feel about your business? And she said, well, I just want to feel growth. Like I just want to feel like my business is building. I said, okay, well then that's the feeling that we're going to go for. We're going to match the goals that we have and the actions around that feeling of growth. So that was just one of the clear things, and defining what money meant, because this person, really is a service based individual, and they just really knew that money, the meaning of money, it was comfort. And so I just said, okay, don't chase
Yeah.
the money, don't want more money, just go for more comfort. Again, it's the mental shift that happens. And so she didn't feel gross or icky about the money. Of course, she needs that because we need it to be profitable, right? In business as entrepreneurs.
Right.
But she
Right.
said, I'm looking for the comfort. I'm looking for the comfort of paying the bills, keeping the overhead cost, everything. It just got more comfortable. And so those are just some quick little booster shots for your listeners on how we arrive at those things. And you hear it's very peaceful, it's very energizing, very empowering. And I just love what I do and I love the clients I serve.
That's great. Yeah, and it shows from from just you describing that. That's so great. Well, one last question before we wrap up here. For those out there, what advice would you give to somebody that might be feeling stuck? And so, it could be stuck in a job, it could be stuck in with a company that they're trying to get off the ground, or someone just considering a move. What are some of the first steps they can take to see if change is
Yeah,
right for them?
and that's a big one. Change is scary, and I think first off is your mindset. Like just say, embrace it. Just allow yourself peace with with your choice. And the big part I think is to stop the overthinking. When I said, the definition of overwhelm is just unmade decisions, sit down and vet the decisions that you have to make today, and it doesn't have to be a laundry list, but if you were to pull 3 to 5 core decisions that you need to make, you're immediately going to help that decision of change and leveraging into something different. And then my last biggest piece of advice is trust that you're going to figure it out, because I'll just give you permission right now. You've gotten this far in the decisions you've made. And so you just got to continue to trust yourself and build the confidence that it takes to make the decision and execute on it.
Do you think for you, did that get easier over time? So you're a three-time entrepreneur. Like, did you have like looking back? Was it easier the third time versus the first time, and stuff like that? Is it kind of like a muscle that gets built, or how
Oh
do you
yeah,
think
I
of
mean,
that?
yeah, we condition ourselves, right? So success boarding is, we strengthen our positive optimistic muscle. That's exactly what that strategy does. So it's like going to the gym, we get better at it the more time that we give it. And things do become a lot easier for us. And I think, yeah, I've always just given myself a lot of trust. And have I failed a lot? You bet. Have I gotten myself into situations that were tough? No question. We all do. Nobody's immune to that. But your resilience and your bounceability, literally, like that's going to be your game changers. Like, how fast can you get back up on your feet after a setback or after, something else? So, I'm going to share this mantra because this is something I've heavily lived with as an entrepreneur. A setback is a setup for a comeback. So, when I say that, if you've experienced a setback in your business or in your life, look at it as a setup and know that your greatest comeback is coming because you've had it. So let that infuse you and give you the motivation to make the decision and go for the change.
Yeah, I love that. Well, Marlo, thanks so much for joining the show. For those listening, what's the best way for them to keep up with what you're doing and
Oh,
contact you if
thank you
they're
so
interested?
much, Greg. I also have a podcast which you get to be a featured guest on, and we offer 22 motivational
Nice.
minutes with Marlo. And, we created that podcast as a booster shot of knowledge to help passionate entrepreneurs condense an hour of research into 22 minutes of powerful conversation, just like what you're doing here, Greg. So, go on over to 22 motivational minutes. You can also download a formula that helps you with mastery of time and clarity. And you can get that free download at go.marlohiggins.com. And you can also visit our website, marlohiggins.com, and catch me up on LinkedIn.
Wonderful. Well, again, I'd like to thank Marlo Higgins for joining the show. Thanks for listening to The Agile World with Greg Kihlstrom. See you next week. Thanks again for listening to the Agile World podcast, brought to you by Tech Systems. I'm your host, Greg Kihlstrom. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to subscribe on your podcast channel of choice and leave us a rating so that others can find the show more easily. You can learn more and get a copy of my latest book, The Agile Workforce, from my website at theagile.world.